Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to MindShifters Radio with your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie. Michael and Jeanie share with you the wisdom of the ancient Aramaic internal process of forgiveness. They offer tools and support 5 days a week from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They will support you in building a solid foundation within yourself to live in pure love. In Aramaic, Rakhma. Michael is the author of Why Is This Happening to Me Again? For more information on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. And now your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce.
And the truth that is rooted within me.
Hi, and welcome to MindShifters Radio. Our call-in number is 646-200-4169. And today is day 40 of our Memorial Day celebration. Hi, Michael.
Good afternoon. And it's an awesome day here in Bristol, Tennessee. Sunny, a little cloudy, and warm. And we're delighted that you're here to share with us our work on forgiveness. As Jeanie said, it's day 40 of the celebration of Memorial Day, and if you haven't been with us on the show, that means that we are on day 40 of inviting everybody that is involved in the work to really, truly honor those who have been murdered or forced to murder, injured, maimed, brought those scars home and touched those at home with those scars, that we honor them by truly taking responsibility inside of ourselves for war and doing something about it. Well, what can I do about war? Here's what you can do about war. You can face one thing in your life today where you hold some form of hostility or fear, and you can forgive that. You can remove that from yourself. We offer the thought that war is caused by the holding of hostility and fear within this human energy system. And when we do that, we tend to externalize the cause of our pain, and we think it's about everybody else. And, of course, the ultimate extreme of that is, well, if I can just kill those bad guys, then things will get better. Well, we offer that's a fraud of the non-being mind, and that we're responsible and can change that dynamic in the world. So join us. If you're not familiar with the forgiveness process that we're speaking of, we invite you to go to the website, www.whyagain.com. And on the right-hand side, you'll see a link that says Download Worksheets. We invite you to download the first 3 links under that particular link, and you'll find a full explanation, a copy of the actual worksheet process of the forgiveness, how in Aramaic you forgive. And the third item under that link is a link to an MP3 of our radio show back a couple of months ago when we walked somebody through the forgiveness process. So we invite you to pick up on those things, do some work, step inside your own mind. And you might be amazed and excited about what you find there and how much of a difference you can really, truly make in the world. So, Jeanie, do we have any callers or any comment in the chat room? Do we have anybody on? Is Tim or David with us this morning or this afternoon? David, how are you today, sir?
I'm good, Michael. I think you're on the road.
Not quite. I'm going to be on the road shortly.
Okay. Well, things are going well here. Getting ready for the intensive. And
really hard to understand you, David. David, impossible to understand you. Impossible to understand you. Are you still with us?
I'll move to another location.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yesterday, while we're waiting for David to make that shift around and see if we can get a better signal, out there in the Ozarks, the phone signals aren't always the best it can be. But as we wait for that, we'll look a little bit into what it was that we spoke of yesterday on looking, how would life look if we look through a connected space of love in our minds, if we look through the eyes of a true human life, which is love. And our definition in this work of a human life is hold love, conscious, active, and present. Hold a newborn child, and you have a direct experience of a human life. What would things look? How different would things be if that's where we lived? And that's where we're inviting people to move to that space of that connectedness to love. David, shall we try again and see if things are any better?
How's it?
Go ahead and say a few words, and I'll tell you. It's hard to tell at this point.
Well, is this any better? No?
Jeanie, how's it sound from your side? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Just checking in. Just doing well, getting ready for the intensives 2 days away, and for you guys to arrive, and eager to connect on a physical level again, and just getting ready. Nothing particular going on.
Yeah, I'm not sure just what's happening, David, but the signal's really poor. So it may be that our phones are feeding back, although we haven't had that experience before, so I'm going to move to another place and see if it improves any. So let's give it one more try, David, and see if we've got a better signal.
He must have hung up to dial back in. He's not on the switchboard, so.
Okay. Well, the work of forgiveness is an interesting work. It is not a work for wimps. It is definitely something that takes some courage to take responsibility for everything that happens in your mind and remove what's based in hostility or fear is a major task for most people. And it's fortunately something that can be done. And we are here to support you in being able to do that. Because it is, I believe, the only thing that's going to change the dynamic that's happening on this planet of insanity, of rage, of fear, of grief, of pain. And as enough of us choose to change the dynamics, we're going to see something different unfold on the earth. And our call-in number is area code 646-200-4169. If you have a question for us, 646-200-4169. We would be delighted to hear from you. We would love to have your questions and the refinement of the process of forgiveness. How do we change the internal dynamics that happens in our lives, in our world, in ourselves? You know, probably the greatest atrocity done to us as human beings down through the ages is that we have had hidden from us the fact that we are by nature creators. You and I are creative beings, which, of course, is an idea that everybody loves. Unless the creation's not going so well. And then don't we have somebody that's always to blame? And isn't their name always them? So we're looking to move out of the them game and back into, this is something happening inside of me. Maybe it's something that I need to change inside of me and in my life. And as I choose to change that, then I get to see and experience a different world. And that different world is one that's made of an awesome presence of love called human life. We're here to support everyone living in that human life. One of the ways that we keep ourselves fooled and believing that what's going on inside of us is about somebody else is that we live in a state of denial, and out of that denial, our language becomes what we call projection language. Now, projection language is the language where I pretend that what's happening inside of me is caused by you. And so I say, you made me angry, you made me sad, you made me afraid, you made me whatever it is that I don't want to be responsible for today, you made me that way. And as long as I'm living there, I will see, literally in my mind, I will see a world where it really does look like you're the problem in my life. And by forgiving, I get to change that. We're not specifically going to go into the forgiveness process today unless somebody comes up with a question that looks in that direction, but we do want to talk about communication and the difference between responsibility communication and what we call projection communication. Responsibility communication is the communication where if I'm in pain or in turmoil or in trauma, I get to own the fact that I have that pain or turmoil or trauma. And that looks like if, let's say, you do something that I don't like and all kinds of pain comes up in me, that looks like me owning my pain. And instead of explaining to you how you hurt me, I'll move into a conversation about, well, when thus and so happened, that brought up a lot of fear, anger, hurt in me. And I realized that fear and anger and hurt is a product of what's happening in my mind, in my physiology. So what I'm looking to do is to have support for my healing. What most people do is they look at problem solving. Well, if I could just change you so you'd never do that again, then I'd never have to look at this part of my mind again. But, of course, if I never get to look at this part of my mind again with you, I'm going to have to resonate as a creator or pull somebody else in to show me that part of my mind. And as I get to see that part of my mind again and again and again, I'll get opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to change those parts of my mind. And changing those parts of our minds is called forgiveness. That's where we want to go. And responsibility communication empowers us to see the parts of our minds in need of healing. Projection communication disempowers us and has us stuck in the space of pretending it's all about somebody else. And, Jeanie, do we have any questions in the chat room? Any comment? Any callers online?
David's back on, but there's nothing in the chat room. David, you're on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Better. Is this better? Hello? Hello?
Go for it, David. Much better.
Oh, cool. The responsibility communication and projection communication is one of my favorites because the fact that the communication and how it is that I communicate with others is really just a reflection of how it is I'm communicating with myself. And the language that you're talking about using the word "you" is that projection as if it was someone else doing it, and that is my one of my biggest insights is when our biggest happenings for me is when I got that insight, that understanding of it, and then the challenge was for me to communicate with everyone, holding and using the language of me, and there for a while, it seemed a little pretentious that I was being self-centered with myself and in communicating with other people about using that language. It was a lot of unnerving for folks to be able to even recognize and to acknowledge that. So that's a real challenge, I think, for anyone to take the responsibility on of projection communication, because as you said, it just reflects in our mind when we've heard it for so long that it must be this way. It just absolutely has to be that way. Now, as soon as I do use the word I and taking responsibility for my actions and thoughts and so forth, it automatically does shift and open the space for other people to open up and to be responsible. You know, the tool that, and you might talk about that because people can go online and download it, is the Respons-ablity Communication and the different steps. And, of course, the steps are in order, 1 through 7, and if I really begin with the first step and get real clear with the first step before moving to the second one, it makes perfect sense, and it does open up the space for other people in order to grasp and to get present and to understand what communication is all about. And the real key is for me to know that I'm always communicating with myself inside. So you may want to chat about that.
Well, one of my favorite little kind of tongue-in-cheek ideas in that communication process is to invite people to look at a definition of the word "word," and most everybody agrees that a good definition of the word "word" is a tool of communication. So, if a word is a tool of communication, of course, words are indicative of an interaction between two or more. You know, in this case, our audience is being kind enough to listen, and you and I are communicating, but there would be no need for words if there weren't at least two of us involved. And so if that's an agreeable definition, which most everybody shakes their head and says, yeah, that makes sense. So then my next step is to invite everybody to take a look at the fact that there are words running inside your head right now. And those words are not being communicated to anyone else. So if words are tools of communication, indicative of an interaction between two, the question becomes, who's in there with you? Who's talking to who? Who's telling you the meaning of anything that I have to say to you today? And I'd offer that who's in there with you is your whole past. Every generation, every thought, every feeling, every reality of every generation is in there, continuously telling us a story. And the story, if it contains hostility or fear, is insane. And because most people have no clue how to take responsibility for their hostility or fear, let alone how to change their hostility and fear, then the communication that happens because of the denial and dissociation from the hostility and fear is, you made me angry, you made me sad, you made me afraid. Jeanie and I will do a demonstration up at the front of the room where I'll invite her to come up, and we'll do this little thing where we, have our matching bags of garbage. Of course, Jeanie's is much smaller than mine, right, honey? And so we have our matching bags of garbage, and we, like everybody in a new relationship, we keep our bags of garbage hidden. We pretend we don't have any. And, it's almost like relationship becomes a game of, let's see if I can keep my bag of garbage hidden from you and from myself. And if you help me do that, I'll love you. And if you don't, then I'll pour my bag of garbage all over you. And so we do a skit kind of thing where then I'll ask Jeanie, or we'll play out that Jeanie gives me the look and brings up hurt in me. And in the classic relationship, when I get the look and I'm hurt, what's my language? Well, you hurt me. If you look at that language, what I've done is taken a reality in my mind, in my physiology, and I've made a carbon copy, and I'm inviting Jeanie to own it. I'm inviting Jeanie to take it on, that she hurt me. If she buys that, I put that carbon copy in her bag of garbage, and, of course, her bag of garbage gets bigger. And then probably she's going to have the matching bag of garbage. The world calls relationships based in matching bags of garbage love relationships. And she's probably going to have a retort that will go something like, yeah, and when you get into that hurt stuff, it really makes me mad. So here I language my hurts about Jeanie, and Jeanie languages, and cancel this whole image, but Jeanie languages that her mad is about me. If I buy that, I get that carbon copy in my bag of garbage, and because each of us communicates via projection, And the other one, if they buy in, enlarges their bag of garbage. A dynamic, again, cancel the thought, a dynamic in that relationship is set up that we keep enlarging each other's bags of garbage by making those projection statements in carbon copy and handing the carbon copy to our partner. Now, the alternative that we offer is, what if when Jeanie gave me the look, instead of projection language, instead of denying that I have hurt that's brought up by that look, how about if I just changed my language a little bit? And instead of, Jeanie, you really hurt me with that look, we'll see people just time and time again about how you hurt me, you did this to me, you did that to me, over and over and over again. We watch people doing that game. And if I recognize that my hurt is about what's going on in me, then my language is going to be more like, Jeanie, when you gave me that look, that brought a lot of hurt up in me. And I didn't realize I had this kind of hurt. Will you support me in healing my hurt? Now, all of a sudden, instead of somebody to blame it on, there's a good chance I've got somebody who's going to support me in healing. Totally different dynamic. And if Jeanie replies, instead of how I make her angry when I'm hurt, if she replies as an adult and owning what's going on in her, if she replies with, well, when you get into that hurt stuff, it brings anger up for me, and I realize that this anger is something that I need to get loose of. I need to forgive. I need to change that in me. Then all of a sudden, we're both entered into responsibility communication. The dynamic of a whole relationship changes when you have two people who do responsibility communication instead of projection communication. And so when I say to my mind, you hurt me, what I'm saying to my mind is, mind, I want you to make up a reality that shows me that she's the cause of my hurt. And my mind has no choice but to follow my directions. And so my mind will show me that she's the cause of my hurt, and I'll really believe that. And vice versa with Jeanie. But when I change my language, I give my mind a different form of permission. When I shift into responsibility for my hurt, I give my mind permission to show me directly that my hurt comes from inside of me. It's a product of something that's mine, and now it's something I can change. Whereas, if I believe it's Jeanie's, of course, I can't change what's going on in Jeanie. I can only change what's going on in myself. So by using responsibility communication, and as a result of a conflict, each of us gets to do some healing. And as we get to do some healing, everything in our world and everything in our lives changes. Now, once we've done that demonstration in front of an audience, I'll turn to the audience and ask the question. So let's see here. How many in our audience were brought up in the home with the dad who, when he went into a rage over something, turned to mom and said, dear, when you did thus and so, it brought rage up for me, and I realized I really need to heal my rage. Would you support me? And, of course, everybody breaks into hysterical laughter because almost no one. Now, we've been asking this question of people for, long time, thousands of people. And there's actually only ever been one occasion when I asked the question, how many were brought up with the dad whose language responsibility when he was hurt, when he was feeling hurt or trauma or whatever was going on. And the first time in all the years I've been asking that question, which has been a decade and a half or more, the first time I had somebody raise their hand, Jeanie and I were actually on a yacht in Biscayne Bay doing a workshop for a group of people. And there was a young man in his early 20s who put his hand up and he said, I was brought up with that dad. And I looked at him like, whoa, you're the first. And his dad was there, and it was like, oh, yes, okay. His dad was the one who arranged for us to connect him with this group of people. He'd done my work about 25 years ago. First young man said, my dad did that. And then, of course, I turned to the audience once again. How many were brought up with the mom who, when she went into, anger over, gee, dad came home late and the dinner got thrown away, saw Dad come in the house and Mom turned to Dad and said, dear heart, when you come home from work late like that, it brings up anger for me because I've just wasted all my time making a dinner, and I would really love some support in healing my anger. And, of course, again, the room breaks into laughter, sometimes kind of hilarious laughter, sometimes kind of nervous laughter, because we realize how ridiculous our upbringing has been throughout the whole culture. And it's not – it's about how our culture operates. That the attitude we talked about the other day of those who love truth look into their errors and thought in the errors of their society. So as I look at the errors in my society, one of the errors in my society is our whole language is about projection. I mean, almost the whole thing is the projection dynamic. And so when you shift over to that responsibility dynamic, whole different realities show up in your mind. You get to live in a totally, completely different world. And that's the world we're looking to support.
Cool, are you there? Jeanie?
I had to sign back in. I got bumped off.
Hello?
Hi, is anybody else there?
Well, I'm here.
Okay. It just totally went quiet.
Oh, that was strange. Okay, I don't know what happened.
Okay.
But anyway, any callers or anything in the chat room to be aware of?
No. There's
Nope.
nothing.
David, do you have any thoughts there?
Oh, please, Michael, always, it is the idea about, there was something that I heard the other day, and I thought, wow, this is exactly what it is that goes on, is that my inner voices always match my outer voice, and my outer voice always matches my inner voice. As you say, my words fly up, my thoughts below, and being conscious of the language and communicating in a way that whatever it is that I'm really hearing going on the inside and observing what it is that I'm saying to people is a real reflection of what it is going on inside of me. When I've heard you talk about in our culture with sarcasm and language people use, oh, I was just teasing, I was just kidding, oh, I'm just kidding about that, and being really conscious about the language that I'm using really tells me what's going on the inside of me, the truth of whether it is or not. One of the my teachers had told me before, and I think that in essence it's the same thing what you've expressed, that the mind really can't lie in the sense that it always tells the truth about what it is that it has stored within itself. So in using a language of that I lied about something, in essence, to me, I'm telling the truth because of what it is that I'm saying. It's the truth that I hold within me. It's not necessarily the truth. And I'm convincing myself that it is the truth. And if it has any hostility or fear or negativity on it, well, then I know that it's not really the truth with all of it. So that might add a little more to the conversation. Somebody might have some questions that they want to call in about explaining that.
Yes, and our call-in number is area code 646-200-4169. If you have any questions for us, we'd be delighted to hear you. Any question on any of the tools would be most appreciated. And the steps of responsibility communication, as David said earlier, there are 7 of them that we offer, you can download the worksheets from the website. In fact, if you're on your computer as we talk about them, you might want to just go to www.whyagain.com, and on that website is a link that says download worksheets, the same one that takes you to the reality management process. And if you look down the list, you'll see one that says Respons-ablity Communication, or it might be titled Communication. Did you hear what I think I said, which is the name of the workshop or the DVD that we go over that process. And so that 7-step process starts out where the first step is a commitment. One of the things that we understand from our Getting the Stress You Need workshop is that the mind serves up behavior in response to goals. If my goal for communication is to protect myself, to win, to overpower, to prove that somebody else is wrong, one, I use up a lot of my mind's resources with that, so I don't tend to be as smart as I could be. And 2, my mind will always serve me advice, behavior that is led by those goals. So if I live in a world where I really believe, well, it's just not safe, then in living a world that's not safe, then I'm always looking to see who the bad guy is, to see who it is that I need to blame for what's going on inside of me. And the way I can tell is I'll have hostility toward others. I'll look at what others do and have resentments or what have you, instead of maintaining my human life. And, of course, I'll blame them. My conversation will be all about how they did and what they did and how I'm justified being in my upset. Excuse me, folks. You're never justified being in your upset. You're damaged by being in your upset. No matter how your mind plays it out and shows you that you are right and they are wrong, if you're in upset, you're creating a disease process in yourself. Give it up. Give it up. But what happens is when we're in denial and this dissociated state is we have pain and we immediately go into our conversation about who caused it and why they caused it and how they caused it and what they did, how they should change, and if only they did this, if only they do that, and if everybody would just do this, then everything would be fine. I wouldn't have to be in this state. Well, I'd offer that none of that has to do with the state you're in. The thing that has to do with the state you're in is the contents of your own mind. And so if you're in pain, stop, own it, and make a commitment. And the commitment is to communicate. Respons-ablity communication takes you into a state where you start to see your part in whatever it is that's playing out in your life. So the commitment is to communicate. I commit to communicating in this situation about you, and we define communication, again, as opposed to, using words to overpower, abuse, win, protect, whatever kind of games might go on in our lives, that communication is the ability to transfer intact a reality that's in my mind into your mind so that you can understand what's going on in my mind. Oftentimes we think we're talking about the same situations, but we're really not because we've got so many different realities, and we presume that once we've stated our reality, of course, somebody else must understand it. But if it triggers different brain cells in them, they don't understand our reality at all. They only understand the reality that they hold. So to communicate is, and on both sides of this, the person who's receiving the communication is the willingness to receive accurately a description of a reality in another's mind so that you can comprehend that to the best of your ability, and for the person who's doing the speaking to be able to communicate in a way that actually transfers understanding to that other person. If you bring up somebody who's in there with them, their hostility and fear, chances are communication's going to stop. Another example I'll use in the workshop is if, imagine you and I, any one of you that's on the show right now, and I were in a one-on-one conversation, and I said, yesterday when you said thus and so, that really peeved me, and things better change around here. How many get warm heart-cockle feelings as a result of that communication? Not likely. I've never had anybody put up their hand. And notice that when I say that, chances are you feel like, I'm out of here. I don't want anything to do with this. Now, if I change my language, that's projection language. That's the norm of the culture. If I change the language just slightly, you know, yesterday when you did thus and so, that brought a lot of pain up in me, and I realized that being responsible for my pain and being able to get rid of it is really going to benefit my life. Would you support me in healing that? Chances are I'm going to have a far better chance of having you hang around with me and actually support me in that process of healing. Support in the process of healing is a monumental gift to give to somebody. And so by opening the communication in a way that you take responsibility, it's going to tend to move things much more rapidly in the right direction. So the opening of the responsibility communication process is, in the first step is, I make a commitment to communicating, and I have an issue that I realize I need to work through, and I would like your support in dealing with this. Would you support me? Now, when you use that first step, there may be people who will jump for joy at the fact that you're in upset. Hooray, good, I'm glad, that's what I intended. I wanted you to be in pain and trauma. Good, I accomplished my goal. Well, you know, there may be people who will respond that way, and we have other tools to deal with situations where somebody might be jumping for joy at the fact that you're in pain or trauma. If you follow through with these 7 steps of responsibility communication, even when someone's jumping for joy, you will be the benefactor of getting to see the content of your mind directly and truly and be empowered to change it if it's off base. So you're going to be the first benefactor of that process. If that person isn't interested in listening or isn't interested in any participation in any sort of conversation, well, then that's where you drop this tool, then perhaps, and you move on to working with a different tool. You work on you know, you might go into the reality management process. You might use the commitment. You might use the codependence worksheet. There are many other tools that we have for you to use. But that first step is the commitment to communicate and that invitation. And if you're feeling disconnected from someone, then that might be the place to make a physical connection. You know, I'm really feeling disconnected in this moment. Would you support me? And you know, put your hands out and actually make a physical contact. Hold hands or what have you to make that sort of a connection. That's the first step, is commitment to communicate. Now, if you've ever been in a situation where you've had a big fuss with somebody over something, and maybe a week or a month later you found out you were talking about 2 totally different situations, that doesn't work very well in communicating with people. So the second step is where you take responsibility for owning that each of you is talking about the same circumstance. And the way that you do that is by using objective descriptors for the actual event. And the way we determine that is, what could a single frame camera take a picture of? What could a tape recorder record? So if you can take a picture of it with a single frame and a camera, if you can record it with a tape recorder, it belongs in this step in the process. Your mind has lots of interpretations for the actual event. This is not a place for, in responsibility communication, for your mind's interpretation. There is a place in the process for that, but this isn't it. So at this point, mechanical facts only, please. And you want to make sure that you're involved in the conversation, that as you describe to someone the mechanical facts, you include yourself in the description. Oftentimes people will say they want to do responsibility communication, and then they'll move into, and when you did this, and when you did that, and when you did that, and you did that, it's going to be real hard to convince them that you feel like you've got any part in it or that you want to be responsible at all. So this step is about taking total responsibility and communicating with yourself involved in the picture. And the example I use in the DVD or in the live workshop communication, did you hear what I think I said, is I'll set up a scenario, and, the people are sitting in the room. So, imagine you're sitting at home reading a book in the front room. You came home from work early, and you're just sitting there relaxing. And I come in the front door, and I'm going to do a behavior, and I'm going to ask you to describe what occurred. And so I, make like I've walked out the door and I'm coming back in through the door. I have a whiteboard eraser in my hand, and I walk into the room, and I forcefully throw the eraser against the board, where it usually makes a pretty loud clap, and put my hand in my pocket and walk toward the board. And so then I'll ask people, if you would, describe to me that situation. Describe what just happened. And most people will come up with, well, you're really angry. It's like, well, can a camera take a picture of angry? Single frame camera. I'd offer absolutely not. My face may be contorted, and that might mean that I just ran the Boston Marathon, and it might mean that I'm really enraged. But a single frame of a camera can't really tell, which is true. So when you say to me, in that little scenario that I just set up, when you say to me that I was really angry, what you're telling me is if you just did the behavior that I did, that would mean you're angry. But it doesn't necessarily mean that I am. Your reality may be accurate about me, but it may not. We know for sure it's accurate about you, but we don't know for sure whether it's accurate about me. And if you sit there trying to convince me that your reality is accurate about me, probably my who's in there with me is going to come up, and that's going to be the end of our communication. So a camera can't take a picture of my emotional condition in any given circumstance. What are the mechanical facts of that situation? And so it would be, I was sitting in the front room reading a book. Important to put yourself in this scenario. And you came in the front door, and I noticed you had an eraser in your hand. You walked toward the board, threw it, and put your hand in your pocket and walked away. They're the mechanical facts. And that's all that belongs at step number 2 in the responsibility communication process. Just the mechanical facts. It's kind of like Dragnet. Give me the facts, man, just the facts. It's not a place for interpretation. The next step is room for that. But at this stage, you're just identifying the situation. And let's just check with Jeanie and see if there are any questions in the chat room, comments at this point, or any callers on the line.
Everybody's just being real quiet.
Okay, cool. So once I've established the mechanical facts and we're in agreement so that, I know that we're both talking about the same circumstance, then the third step moves into the subjective observations, the subjective interpretation or understanding of the event. So subjectively, many people sitting in the room might say, well, you were really angry. And once again, if you took the eraser and threw it like that and put your hand in your pocket, that might mean or would mean that you were angry if you give it that interpretation. But it might not mean that for me. What if after you tell me how angry I was, I share with you, I didn't even realize that you were in the room. I had, the reason I was late tonight is I'd gone out and tried out for a play. And in trying out for that play, I tomorrow night have to go back, and I may get the lead part in this play, and I have to walk into a room looking really angry. So I didn't even realize you're in the room. I was just practicing. What happens to your piece is that I was really angry. Well, you're telling me I played the part well, but your thesis about me being angry isn't accurate. So when you try to convince me that what's going on in you is accurate about me, chances are we're going to end communication because you're telling me that your reality, the output of your mind, must be true about me. And sometimes it might be, but there might be a great many times when it's not true about me either. So And what will tend to happen is people, again, when we started out, I talked about problem solving. People will tend to think in terms of problem solving. Well, you came in, you made all this noise, and you were angry. Therefore, if I could just get you to never come home angry again, then everything would be all right in my life. And the third step in responsibility communication is where you identify your issue in terms that reflect your awareness that your issue is about you, that it's not about them. And so that might be the space for me to recognize that I felt like you were really angry. Now, of course, if you've got a history with someone, they might just jump in and, in their most angry tone, tell you how they're never angry. Some of us know people who play that, right? But in that scenario, if I felt like you were angry, that's not the problem. What I need to do is identify my problem. If I'm the one sitting in the chair when you come in and throw the eraser, and let's say you are in a fit of rage, your rage is not my problem. However, if I'm really honest with myself and I acknowledge that what I perceive is you being enraged, then when I really own it, what I'm going to start to be able to language is, I felt like you were enraged, and what I realized is that I was terrified. I was really scared. Now we're getting to the core of the issue of the person who's doing the communication. As long as someone holds terror about anger, remember when we started out in this whole series, we were talking about why is this happening to me again, and I talked about the work that I did with Marcel Vogel, who was a 23-year senior scientist from IBM. Marcel had the instrumentation in the laboratory with which to take a picture of the high-energy waves that leave the mind when we think a thought. Literal, actual, measurable energy waves. So if I hold terror about angry people, that energy wave that radiates from me sets up a field. Guess what it communicates to every angry person in town? I like to call it the psychic megaphone. And what it communicates is, hey, world, I have terror about angry people. I need to heal my terror. So is there anybody in town who could come and resonate my terror? Well, guess who's coming to dinner? It's always going to be the person who knows exactly how to resonate what I don't want to deal with. And so when they do, they're going to give me the opportunity to deal with my terror. Thank you. So the person who can show you that is actually a person who would be appropriately thanked for what they're able to show you. So as you show me my terror, I get to see what perhaps my whole life I've been hiding from myself. And as I get to see it, I get to be responsible for it and change it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to heal my terror. You've given me an awesome gift. And so as you give me that awesome gift, rather than condemning you, I thank you, I appreciate you, and I communicate in a way that shows me that I'm responsible for what I'm experiencing. And I get to start to change what I'm experiencing. So step 3, when you came into the room and threw the eraser, I realized I was really terrified over what I perceived to be your anger. And, of course, if you were angry or if you're not really doesn't matter. It's not about you being angry. It's about my terror. And what I realized is I really need to heal this terror. Would you support me in it? Now, the minute you start blaming somebody else for the output of your mind and telling them how they should change your mind, you've assigned them the impossible task. Most people, when they're assigned the impossible task, leave, either physically or emotionally. They disappear. They vacate the space because they learned very early in life that they couldn't be responsible for or change other people's minds. They couldn't change other people's pain. So if you want to actually have people who are able to stay in relationship with you, when you own that you have some form of pain or trauma around a particular issue, what happens is it's a lot easier for them to stay in the space. So as I say, and I realized I had terror, then I've completed step 3. We've got the responsibility for what's going on in each of our minds, I for me and you for you. And I realize that I am in some sort of trauma here, and I'm looking for support in healing my trauma. And so that leads into the 4th step, and the 4th step in responsibility communication is what I want. Now again, most people, when they get into the what they want stage, it will always be about changing them. Well, if you could just be different, if you would just never show up angry again. Well, if you do that, you're just going to have to create more and more and more angry people who are going to show you your anger. So let's take advantage of the fact that my anger is up right now. That my fear is up over what I perceive to be your anger. And as you show me that, I now ask for what I want. And what do I want? I want support and healing. Not I want to problem solve and make sure you never come home angry again. But I want support and healing and forgiving as to my anger. And so when you have shown me that, I now have the opportunity. That anger or that fear, that terror is out of hiding in terms of my internal content. And now I can see that that's something that I need to deal with. And so I'm going to thank you for showing me that part of my mind. And my request in step 4 is going to be for support and healing. Not problem solving, not please don't ever come home angry again, but rather I need to do some healing around this terror. I didn't even realize it was there. So that's step 4. You use words that reflect that your issue is yours, and the request in step 4 is always assistance and support for healing that issue. So your partner may say at that point, let's assume that there is, goodwill in the process. Your partner says, gee, I never even, as I said, I didn't realize you were in the room. I was doing this practice thing for the play. I thought you were upstairs. Never occurred to me you'd be sitting in the front room there. And so how about if we do a worksheet around this? And so you maybe sit down and do a worksheet, and you realize that in doing that worksheet, you make a major discovery, and this is one of the awesome things about the reality management forgiveness process is you get to discover things about yourself that you never knew. And this comes from a real life situation with someone whose father was a drunk, and he was sometimes a very happy, generous drunk, and sometimes a very angry drunk. And when he would come home, of course, it was a large family, and of course the kids would want to know whether Dad was in the awesome, happy place where he was bearing gifts, or whether he was in the angry, beat-em-up space and was going to be abusive. So what I discover in doing that worksheet with your support is, geez, when I was a kid, they used to push me out to see whether Dad was going to be happy and bearing gifts and all the kids should come out and get their gifts, or whether Dad was going to be angry and beat up on us. And I got beat up more times than I can count, and having been forced to do that. So someone who is dissociated from that part of their mind has made a major healing discovery through forgiveness if they learn that about themselves. Now, that's going to be one of those issues that's probably going to take, something that deep and that old. It's probably going to be one of those 77 times 70 worksheet issues. It's not going to be done overnight. It's going to take some time. So you've really, with your partner's support, and it can be difficult to ask for support and then shut up and listen, to actually honor the person you're in front of that your mind really wants to blame, to honor them and invite their actual support in healing. But let's imagine that you've done that. Then the next step, now that you've done that worksheet and you see some of what you need to work on, is a place where you get to put out what you feel would support you in healing. So that might look like, geez, that's major stuff for me. I can hardly breathe right now. Would you take me through a still point session? So the fifth step is the request. Sixth step is the request for what you think would bring you healing. So, and as I say, in that case, it might be, I really need to breathe here. Would you take me through a still point session? And so you've completed now 6 steps of responsibility communication. You've done some major work and some major healing. That's an awesome process. And there's a 7th step, or at least there's a potential need for a 7th step. And that is that the 7th step comes when, if you are in a deep, ancient issue, it's going to take some time to work through it. And so that might be where you do the problem solving. It is appropriate to problem solve at this point. And so the problem solving might look like, well, how about in the future, if you have a bad day at the office or you're going to try out for a play, how about instead of just coming home and, doing a behavior like the one you did, or maybe, you are in upset and you might just pick up the phone call and say, hey, I've had one of those rotten days. How about, just ignoring anything that I do? Because we realize that the trigger for me is the shock of somebody coming in and being in the state that I'm going to get a surprise out of. I'm going to get beat up or what have you. So that's an appropriate step or state for problem solving and moving through this process of healing. And they're the 7 steps of responsibility communication, kind of in the short form. We do have a 2-hour DVD. If you want to order that on our website, you can pick that up. If you happen to be in the Asheville, North Carolina area, I'm actually driving to Asheville as we speak, and I'm going to be heading over the mountain and losing my phone signal in a few minutes. But at 5 o'clock, we're going to be at a place called Cousana's Restaurant, and a number of people are getting together to share dinner. I think it'll probably be a dozen or more. And then at 6:30, we're going to do the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop. So you'd certainly be welcome to join us for that workshop if you'd like to come and be part of that. We'd love to have you. We've also got our intensive season starting in less than 2 weeks now, on the 18th. We'll start a 9-day Why Is This Happening to Me Again if you're ready to take your work to the next level. And Jeanie, do we have any callers, questions, thoughts, answers, ideas on the website?
No, everybody's being really quiet today, and we've just got less than 2 minutes.
Yes, time flies by when you're having fun. David, do you have a final thought or comment on your vision? I know that the team in particular back 2 years ago just really tapped into this tool and has used to extreme measures for dealing with issues. Do you have any thoughts for us before we close out?
Well,
down to about a minute and a half.
Okay, I just encourage everyone to go to the website and to their own experience of it, to take the worksheets, whatever worksheet it is, and apply it in your life. And if you have questions about it, and from having an experience of it and getting some insights and looking for them, then call and have a chat about it, because without your input, with your perspective of it,
okay, David, we're closing down to about the last 10 seconds, so I'm gonna sign off and wish everybody the best year yet of your eternal lives. Please use the tools, bring somebody to the show tomorrow, and have a blessed day. Jeanie, thank you for your support.
Thank you for listening to MindShifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife Jeanie, who present the internal Aramaic process of forgiveness. Michael and Jeanie are here every Monday through Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Earth Angels Radio. For more on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. That's www.whyagain.com.